Welcome to this Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival event, and welcome to Aberystwyth. Croeso i'r digwyddiad Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival hwn, a chroeso I Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth, the cultural capital of Wales, home to Aberystwyth University and the National Library of Wales, once home to Welsh princes. The Mavericks of Wales is the jewel in the crown of Cardigan Bay's stunning coastline and home to hugely successful TV drama Hinterland. And now, the streets that have become familiar to fictional D.I. Mathias's many fans are getting ready to welcome celebrities from the worlds of crime fiction and crime drama. Because Aberystwyth is home to Wales's first ever international crime fiction event, Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival. During the early May bank holiday weekend of 2022, Aber, as the town is affectionately known, will play host to a multitude of events that will offer something for every fan of crime fiction and drama. Internationally successful authors will entertain and meet readers in historic buildings. Pub quizzes will bring together authors and readers. Writing workshops, meet the agent sessions, and informal readings will help encourage and develop new writing talent. And in sparkling celebration of new Welsh talent, a champagne reception for Crime Cymru's first crime novel competition winners. This will be an Aberbank holiday weekend like no other. So, come for the crime fiction and take Cymru home in your hearts. Rydym yn edrych ymlaen yn fawr iawn at eich croesawu I Aberystwyth ac I Geredigion.
Noswaith dda pawb, a chroeso i'r digwyddiad Gŵyl Crime Cymru hwn. Good evening, everybody. I'm Alice Hawkins, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event on behalf of Crime Cymru and of our festival partners, Aberystwyth Town Council, without whom, and I mean this very literally, this event would not be taking place. As I hope you'll have seen from our Eventbrite emails, we're highlighting a different Welsh independent bookshop at each Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival event. And the bookshop highlighted tonight is my own lovely local bookshop, Chepstow Books. So if you like the sound of any of the books that we discussed tonight, please do consider ordering from them. There's a click through link on our website. And before she became a multi-award-winning crime writer, she's the author of the Ryan Police Procedurals, which are now being developed as a major TV series. Mary lives in Northumberland with her partner, who's a former murder detective, which must make research a lot easier than it is for most of us. Welcome, Mary. And here she is. Oop, and there she's gone again. Okay, well, while Mary gets her... Oh, there we go. Hello, Mary. All right. Little technical glitch. Okay, you just catch your breath while I introduce Emma Kavanagh. Our next guest, Emma Kavanagh, spent years working as a police and military psychologist, training firearms officers, command staff and military personnel throughout the UK and in Europe. She now has what might be, but probably isn't, a much quieter life living in South Wales with her husband and 2 young children, which is why I don't think it's probably going to be much quieter. Until recently, Emma wrote standalone psychological thrillers, but she's now 2 books into a trilogy, of which the book we're going to talk about tonight, The Devil You Know, is the second. Welcome to us, Emma. There she is.
Hi.
And to complete our own trilogy this evening, I'd like to welcome my fellow Crime Cymru author, Alison Layland. Alison writes what you might call genre-defying books, but since I have to define them, I'll call them psychological thrillers. Having been brought up in Newark and Bradford, which Mary probably thinks make her a soft southerner, Alison's lived in mid-Wales for the last 20 or so years. She graduated from Cambridge with a degree in, and I am going to read this, Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic, and modern and medieval languages. That's quite a degree. So it'll come as no surprise to anybody that she is a professional translator. She's also Crime Cymru's official translator, for which we are extremely grateful. And if I'm honest, a more accurate description than official would be extremely put upon. So welcome, Alison.
Hello, thank you.
Lovely to have you here with us. Right, ladies, I'm going to break with tradition, and I'm not going to ask you how you got into writing in the first place, because frankly, all that information is on the internet. So if anybody wants to know about that, they just have to Google you and they'll be away. So instead, I'm going to ask each of you to give us the elevator pitch for your latest novel. So you've got 1 minute to hook your readers without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Radio 4 joke. Okay, Emma, let's start with you and The Devil You Know.
Okay, so The Devil You Know is about a young woman named Rosa Fisher who suddenly discovers that she isn't who she believed herself to be. As she goes on a quest to discover the secrets in her past, everything in her life gets turned upside down. So she has to use what she knows best, which is psychology, to try and find the answers and to save her own life. I did that inside a minute, look.
Exemplary, exemplary, excellent. Okay, Alison, pitch us Riverflow.
Yes, there it is. Riverflow is a mystery combining the effects of various devastated aspects of family history coming to the fore, and village life, small closed community village life, with the different attitudes between the couple who are my main characters, Beadnell and Sherwell, who are ecological protesters, coming up against more traditional elements of the village. So when the novel starts, they've left the protesting life behind them and are trying to lead a sustainable life on their small holding. And various events at first, trivial, becoming more serious, gradually drive them apart and eventually put their lives in danger against a background of flooding and the river being a real element, as a real dangerous element as well.
Lovely, thank you. You can see why I described Alison's books as genre-defying. We've got climate change and all sorts there. Okay, thank you very much. Mary, pitch us Without Trace, if you would.
Yep, Without a Trace is actually was written as a standalone, but it is the 7th book in the Kate Daniels series, but can definitely be read as a standalone. And it is a book in which Kate Daniels' personal and private lives collide. We're faced with a plane that has disappeared 100 miles away from JFK in New York. The book opens with Kate at the Casualty Bureau trying to blag her way into an investigation she has no authority to investigate, and she does that on the sort of proviso that there is someone on board that belongs to Northumbria Police, and that is the criminal profiler who's booked to fly. And the question is, did she? But what I haven't told you is that profiler is more to Kate than meets the eye, and more that she's letting on about at the beginning. So yeah, it's a book very much about love and loss. It's about all sorts of things, but it's about how far you'd go in order to find a person, a missing loved one, really. So it's crime, it's thriller, it's part romance, really. So yeah, we're bending the rules, all of us, I think, tonight.
Thanks, Mary. That leads me very nicely into another question, which is, I mean, you've all talked about the other aspects of other novels that come into these novels. What made you decide in the beginning to write crime fiction? You're all quite capable, clearly, of writing in other genres. What is it that keeps you with crime fiction? Let's start off with you, Alison, this time.
Yeah, I always like an element of mystery. and sort of jeopardy to add to the story. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I do tend the genre finds me rather than me finding the genre. I mean, Riverflow starts with a death, Bede's Uncle Joe, that is initially considered to be an accident in the flood, and it only becomes more apparent as the novel goes on that there's more to it than meets the eye. So yeah, I love mystery, and I love keeping on the edge of your seat and wondering what's happening, but I don't necessarily set out to do that. It finds me.
Okay, great. How about you, Emma? What is it about crime that really fascinates you?
I think for me, I've always been so interested in how people survive through the worst kinds of situations. And before I came to writing, my entire career was built on the psychology of trauma and the worst kind of situations. So when I started writing about people in these situations, and those situations were generally crime. So it was more like I wrote a story and my agent went, "That's crime." I'm like, "Excellent, thank you for that." So it is very much for me about people surviving the hardest possible experiences and how they come through them.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's funny what you just said there, that you weren't quite sure you were writing crime. So many crime writers will say that, won't they? I didn't know I was writing crime. I thought I was writing a literary novel, or or just a novel. And
Absolutely,
then their agent kind of goes, "We need a genre. It's going in crime."
Yeah, I think we just tell stories, and then it's for our agents and our publishers to go, this is where they'll sit on the bookshelves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mary, did you have the same sort of experience, or were you definitely out writing crime right from the beginning?
I was definitely writing crime. I came to writing because of an offence against me. So I was a victim of an assault at work. I was a probation officer for 15 years, and I didn't know a lot else really. So it's I'm lazy. My partner's an ex-murder detective. I'm an ex-probation officer. I've worked in and out of prisons and what have you. And I know a lot of people out there, a lot of writers will say, "Don't write what you know, write what you don't know." But to me, it works for me. I've got my partner is no longer working now. Was when I started, but keeps me right procedural wise. And I've got a lot of experience, none of which I've used, I have to say. It's not, none of it's sort of based on clients that I knew or offences that I had to investigate to provide reports for court and so on. They come out of my head, but are based definitely on my experience of what I've done, throughout my working life, really.
Yeah, lovely. I like that. Write what you don't know. I actually wrote a whole blog post at one stage, writing what I don't know, because I write historical crime. So I can't possibly know what it's like to live in Wales in the 1850s. But anyway, that's by the by. So
that's hard work, though, isn't it, Alice? I mean, if you have to go and do that much research, you should be paid double, I think. People who write historical crime novels should definitely get more money.
Oh, Mary, will you come be my agent? That sounds like an excellent idea. Yes, I'm sacking my agent now. Yes, let's not get on to me. I'm here to moderate rather than to talk about my stuff. So let's dig down into the theme for tonight, which is when character becomes plot. Because when I was reading your three novels, that's exactly, to me, what happens in these books. If the central character wasn't who they are, if Kate wasn't who she is, if Rosa wasn't who she is, if Bede wasn't who he is, none of the events would happen. I mean, do you agree with that? Is that a fair summary? Emma, let's start with you.
I think that any good book comes from the characters within it. I mean, I think that's why we read, is to sort of expose ourselves to other lives and other people. And I think that for everybody's different, but I think for me, the books that grip me are the characters that keep hold of me. I always talk about Justin Cronin's book, The Passage, another genre-defying one. And he has a character in there who is gone within 30 pages, and she's tiny, tiny, tiny character. And she lives in my heart so many years after I read that book because she's exquisitely done. And that is what I think character can do for your book. you know, even if they're gone, they create this massive jumping off point. So yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, did you know when you started The Devil You Know? Obviously, it's the second in the trilogy. I know it's a trilogy and it also isn't, you know, but it has that central theme of Jackson Wolfe. Did you know that Rosa Fisher's character was going to actually absolutely drive the thing, or did you have an idea of the plot beforehand?
I had a rough idea. I knew who this character needed to be. For those who haven't read it, Jackson Wolfe is the sort of the bad guy who runs throughout the trilogy. But the protagonist for each of the trilogy books is somebody different. So it's kind of exposing you to different angles of his life. So I knew that bit. I knew that it had to be somebody who was in this sort of arena of his life. But I got about halfway through the book, and then I said to my editor, I'm really sorry, you're going to hate me, but I've had a brilliant idea. And she went, okay, what's your idea? And I explained it to her about Rosa is a psychologist. And I said, what if she uses what she knows in terms of the psychology to really drive the investigation and to sort of drive her own feelings. And so that's what I did. And I used all this psychological research. It took a ridiculous amount of time. It just wasn't sensible. But my editor was like, yeah, fine, run with it. And it did take twice as long as it should have taken. But it was one of those things that Rosa demanded it. You know, as I was writing, she's like, you've got to do this. So I just did it.
Wow, well done, because it's outstanding. It's fantastic. I picked that one up first, but now I've gone back to read the previous one as well, and that's also outstanding. Oh, I can't wait for the next one now. So
okay.
hurry up. Alison, what about, did you know that the Bede's character was going to be so important in this novel? Did you have an idea of the way the novel was going to pan out, or does it all come from him?
Not just from him. There are other characters as well, in particular his uncle who died in the flood. He was a minor character to start off with, and then sort of grew to take over, and his story runs through the background as well, in the form of diary entries. As I say, he dies, it's no secret, he dies close to the beginning of the book. But his diary runs through the book, giving the backstory, which also, he was a very important part of Bede's life, so it becomes, you know, giving Bede's backstory as well. And yeah, I mean, he was always a central character, but it's both of them really. It's a marriage, it's him and Ellen, as well as the backstory. And I, as you say, Emma, you know, character's so important. I always start with the character, so the story grows from the character, and you get these little tendrils of his personal history coming through, but also the present, as things start happening, as he makes discoveries about his life, as other things start closing in, his mental states start deteriorating. And so what he does makes things worse as well. So, you know, the whole thing spirals downwards. So, yes, it's definitely a book where, you know, without that character, it would not be. So, yes, very character-centric.
Absolutely. And Mary, obviously, obviously Kate is central to all your books. But if she wasn't so absolutely determined, there literally wouldn't be a plot in Without a Trace, would there? Do you think, or could you have written the book without her just kind of going against everything that everybody told her she should be doing?
Oh, she does that all the time. She would never do what I tell her. The thing is that, I mean, a massive plane crash with, you know, 300 plus people on board is always a big deal. The fact that, you know, what's happened is that I think all the 6 books before this one were building up to this moment, but I did not know until the last line of book 6 what was going to happen. And I left my readers with a cliffhanger at the end of book 6. And that came about just because I thought, I need one more sentence on the end of this book. I want Hank to turn around to Kate. They're standing at 1 o'clock in the morning in a hospital corridor, and he turns, and he had to say something to Kate to end the book. And suddenly I wrote this down, and it was a massive cliffhanger I didn't ever anticipate when I first started writing book 6. So book 7 was always going to be what happens next after Hank says what he says. I won't spoil it because a lot of people won't, you know, I know there's a lot of people here tonight and I know they won't have read the Kate Daniels series, but I wouldn't like to give them the actual cliffhanger. But, and then something happened which I didn't foresee. I changed publisher. And so the first 6 books are with Pan Macmillan, and then I changed and went to Orion, and they wanted me to write something else. So there was nearly a 3-year gap between book 6 and book 7, which is why book 7's been written like a standalone. But yes, I mean, here we are with this awful incident that has happened, that everybody in the world who's got a TV or a newspaper knows about. But I think the thing is, the impact of that plane crash on Kate just gives so much emotional depth to the book. You know that you can feel her panic. You can feel her loss and grief, even though what actually is happening in the book is she is not taking a blind bit of notice of her second in command, Hank, who's basically saying, "Let it go. She can't do that. She just will not do that." And so she just keeps on, hoping that Joe did not get on that plane.
Yeah.
So that drove the whole book forward.
Yeah. And it was incredibly psychologically real, I thought, and you were just kind of in Kate Daniels's mind and heart all the way through. It was incredibly visceral for a novel not written in first person. I find it incredibly engaging on a kind of first person basis. But something you've just said and something Emma said earlier on about your characters doing things. I mean, let's talk a little bit about how much is you driving the book as the author and how much is your characters driving the book. I mean, this kind of goes a bit to, are you a plotter or a pantser as well? Are you somebody who really plots or flies by the seat of their pants? Because I think if you're letting your characters drive the book, then you're a little bit of a pantser. So let's have a bit of a think about plot versus character. Alison, do you want to have a little insight into that first?
Yes, I'm very definitely on the pantser end of what you say. I find it very difficult to plot in advance. I plot very carefully, but that's in my second draft and my third draft, and I probably have to do more drafts than anybody else because when I'm writing it, it does go off into various tangents. And as you said, Mary, at the end of a novel, somebody says something. Yeah, you get something pops into your head and somebody says something. And that can be a whole new plot avenue that you go down. And then you have to think, oh, how does that tie in with that and work it all out? So, yeah, it's very much that the characters drive it. I mean, it's probably my own self-conscious, and there is some control in that sometimes a character will come out with something and you think, oh, that's good, but you do sort of mold it to fit what is already there, or anything new that comes up sort of make it relevant. But it's I find it a really interesting way, but I just simply can't sit down and work out a plot. I don't know, I'm like a rabbit in front of the headlines if I try. I do try because I'm sure it would be time saving to be able to have a framework and then go down it instead of having to rewrite so much. But then again, I'm one of those weird writers that actually loves editing, and so I find if I can get a first draft down and then the rest of it's edited, you sort of got the framework to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emma, Alison's mentioned the subconscious there. She said she's quite a subconscious writer. How much is conscious with you and how much subconscious writing do you think?
Well, I always hesitate to say this because I think it really does brand me as a certain kind of person, but I have spreadsheets. And I am constantly mocked by my agents and my editors for having spreadsheets. But I am a plotter through and through. But what I tend to do before I start the plot is I develop the characters. So I have character spreadsheets in which I know everything. I had a phone call off my film agent once, and she went, you know this character spreadsheet you sent me? I said, yeah, it should. You have their house prices on there, and I've Googled them and they're right. I was really bored. So it is, I'd like to think my subconscious comes into play when I'm developing earlier on. Every now and again, as Rosa did, a character will throw me a curveball and I'll be like, oh no, now I've got to change everything. But yeah, so for the most part, they get to play early, and then I try to, keep them in line.
Okay, interesting. Oh, spreadsheets. You're lucky I'm not coming out in a rash. I can't cope with this. Mary, save me from the spreadsheets. Tell me how to do it.
I'm sorry, I'm a plotter too.
Okay.
I'm a plotter, but not with spreadsheets. I tend, because I did some screenwriting before I started to write books, and that was the way I was taught. Basically, come up with a premise which is a couple of sentences long, and then blow it up into anything between a couple of pages and 25 pages, and then you can start. I don't do 25 pages. I do, a few pages, but I've got the main plot points are there. Some people will say to me, do you feel that stops the creativity? I don't, actually. I need to have a roadmap, but I couldn't do what Alison does, which is write a dirty draft and go back to the beginning. That would kill me. I literally edit as I go along, and when I get to the end, I'm just about ready to send it to my agent and my editor. But yeah, I do that. I couldn't do it any other way. I literally do need that roadmap.
Okay, interesting. I must tell you a story I heard recently on a crime podcast I listened to. I think it's the Blood Brothers podcast. They were interviewing an author, and this author had the most bizarre process ever. She doesn't plot. She just pantses her way through the first draft. She thinks, right, excellent, that's my plan. She literally throws that away and then writes the book. Exactly. Emma's making the face that I made when I heard that. I mean,
that hurt my heart.
That's taking pantsing to an exceptional degree, isn't it? And I was like, wow, that makes me feel like a plotter, honestly. But yeah, so, I mean, there are degrees and degrees on them. I mean, I know Sophie Hannah does enormously intricate plots, like 60 pages. I mean, that's not a plot, that's a novella. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so that's really interesting that you've all done that.
Jeffrey Deaver does 200 or so pages.
What?
And then writes the book. Yeah, I interviewed him at Target, and he basically said that, and that is huge amounts of work. But he said that when he writes the book, it's very quick. I thought, well, it would be if you've written 200 pages.
Absolutely.
And some people do none, and it's just whatever suits you, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, that's quite extraordinary. Coming back to your characters now again, because I am going to bang on the theme of this evening. They're all to some extent not necessarily Mavericks, although I think Kate probably is in that category, but they're all incredibly determined people, aren't they? I mean, even when their lives are in danger, they're going to do what they're going to do. Now, that's quite a common trope, isn't it, amongst crime fiction writers? I mean, my Harry Probert Lloyd is no different. Are we, as crime authors, making our characters mavericks and very determined? Because basically, for ourselves, we're just massive wusses. Is that what's going on here? Larry, are you a massive wuss in real life?
I'm not a wuss.
You're not a wuss, okay.
I've been surrounded by strong women. I wanted to write about a strong woman. Kate is as strong as they get. She's a lot braver than I am. In fact, I think what I'm doing is I'm writing the kind of person I wanted to be, and I'm not, because I'm not a wuss, but I'm certainly not as brave as she is. And I think that, or did I mention that she was kind of partly based on my partner, who, as I said, was a detective and who doesn't do what she's told either. So, yeah, that's about it, really. I hope she's not watching.
What about you, Alison? Are you a wuss in real life, and you give your chutzpah to your characters?
I don't think I'm a wuss, but I do, yeah. One thing that I did with Riverflow, I did consciously want to address environmental issues into it as a background to the story. And part of the backstory goes back to the road protests of the 90s. You probably remember the Newbury bypass and all that, you know, Swampy, who's recently made an appearance again, and all those sort of things. And I've always sort of tried to live an environmentally conscious life, but I've never really been political. And there was an element, I suppose, of regret that I never actually did anything. I mean, actually, sort of semi as a result of writing the novel, I have got into activism to an extent, but I never did. And so I suppose it was playing that out, you know, that sort of guilt that I didn't get more involved in the past. And so I do that through my characters. In terms of being, I don't think I'm that much of a wuss, but you do play out certain aspects with your characters, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We try things on, don't we? What would it be like to be? What would it be like to be like that? How about you, Emma? How different are Rosa and your characters in the previous books to you? Do you think?
I think life would be easier if I was more wussish. I think the common thread, certainly with Rosa, I mean, I think more so with Rosa than any of my other characters, is that she's a character who has a story. She has a story a narrative of her own life, what she believes herself to be, the good girl, you know, the good daughter. And then it gets thrown out and everything changes. And so she has to kind of start from scratch and rebuild that narrative. And in doing so, kind of change who she is as a person. And I love that. And I think that all of us have to do that to a certain extent, is kind of rise above the stories that we've been told about ourselves and about, you know, the kind of the experiences we've had, and create something and create who we want to be. And I think that's very much what Rosa is for me. But a lot of my characters tend to be about people coming from generally psychologically difficult backgrounds and going balls to the wall to make something different out of their lives.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's one of the reasons that people love these books, isn't it? Because we would all like to be like that, wouldn't we? We'd all like to think, if push comes to shove, I actually would do that. I would step into the breach. I would do that. Goodness knows whether we would have or not.
I definitely wouldn't, because I don't like conflict. Actually, I much prefer to get on with people. I really don't like conflict at all. So, whilst I would have liked to have been a police officer rather than a probation officer, I couldn't do it because my kids were little. And then I think to myself, how did you ever think you would ever do it? Because, you know, I don't like conflict. I never have. And I think that's, you know, I think, you know, you either are somebody who can deal with that or you can't.
No, I think that's a really interesting point about conflict, because I think we all love reading about conflict and it's what makes a novel interesting. But I hate conflict, but being able to do it vicariously through your characters and have characters that stand up to others and will create conflict as well as deal with it, you know, I think it is something that we do get out of our systems when we don't necessarily want to do that in real life. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I mean, I love writing conflict scenes. They're to me, they're the most exciting scenes. I hate conflict in real life. Just unlike married, just don't like it at all. Do you all like writing scenes of conflict? Are they, you know, are they exciting for you? I always get terribly excited when I'm writing a scene like that. Sorry, Mary.
I love it. I mean, you know, certainly if I'm in Kate's head, but in this book, she's up against another formidable woman on the other side of the Atlantic, and she's a special agent in charge, and the two of them will meet in the book, and they have a right set to at one point, which I loved writing, actually, I have to say. Trying to get myself into the head of Kate is bad enough, but getting myself into the head of this special agent was equally hard. But I did love it, and it really works.
Yeah, no, it really does. It's fantastic. Emma, what about you with Rosa and also with Alice in the previous book? There's obviously a lot of conflict with different characters. Is that nice for you to write?
It is. I think I was just considering that, and I think I actually more prefer writing threat. You know, so that sort of sense of impending danger. There is a scene where in the book where Rosa against all advice, because that's what our characters do, arranges to meet this person, and she doesn't know who he is, in a dark car park in Wisconsin, which is ludicrous. But I know writing it felt incredibly tense, and it's very cathartic to do something like that. You know, you sort of feel like you've really gotten something out of your system.
Yeah, that's true. And yes, you think, why is she doing this? Has she never watched a thriller on the television? What's the matter with her? You know, come on. I was very, very fascinated reading your two, Emma, the two in the trilogy so far, with the kind of shadowy but very ever-present sense of Jackson Wolfe. So I wanted the three of us to talk, four of us rather, to talk a little bit about the perpetrators, if we like. Perpetrators in my books, because of the way I write, they're not shadowy figures, they're always there. You know, whoever's done the murder or accidentally killed somebody in my books has been front and centre from the beginning. But in lots of crime fiction books, they're sort of there in the background, especially thrillers, I guess. Can any of you imagine doing a Patricia Highsmith and actually writing from the point of view of the bad guy? If you consider Tom Ripley to be a bad guy, of course. Larry, let's start with you.
Well, it depends. My debut starts with a horrible rape, and I wrote that from the antagonist's point of view. And then I just thought, I can't do this. I need to write this from the victim's point of view. I need to make her not a number, just a casual sort of, this has happened and she's killed. And I just couldn't do it from his point of view. So I completely changed the what I was going to write. And so, I haven't ever written a book from that point of view all the way through. I've had chapters where they have been from obviously the antagonist's point of view. But I actually do like writing the bad guys. I think you can... I mean, we don't need to use our imagination that much to know what bad guys are like. But having worked with them, having got inside the heads of offenders in and out of prison, people who killed, people who raped, sex offenders, child sex offenders, I'm already there. I'm already halfway there. But I tend, when I'm writing violence, for example, to back off slightly. I don't go overboard to make it gory or, titillating or anything like that. I'm very careful. I think sometimes when you're writing a scary scene, the slightly a door that is ajar and you can't see what beyond it is more scary than actually putting that person in the doorway. If you looking at a red door or any other door, that door is ajar, and I'm worried now. But I think if you have that, it's a bit like romance scenes. I go so far, but I won't go into too much detail because I never want to be the the bad sex award or something like that. But I think it's a personal choice. Some people like to be very graphic with violence, but I certainly do enjoy writing the antagonist. Whether I'd ever write a whole book about one, I can't imagine that I would. Because my books are really essentially about good over evil. They're not, the other way on. Yeah,
absolutely. What about you, Alison? Can you ever imagine doing that?
Yes, possibly, yes. In both my novels to date, the antagonist has been quite hidden. I enjoy looking at points of view and what drives people. My problem is if I start getting too deep into the mind of the antagonist, I always want to take their side. And while there always is a side and there always is an explanation, and I'm not a black and white person, the good people have flaws and the bad people have redeeming features. And so, the more I delve into the antagonist side, the less black and white it becomes, and they're not antagonistic enough, and so I get what you say about seeing them as a threat from the distance, which is often so much more scary than meeting something head on. So
yeah, true. Emma, have you got a Tom Ripley in you?
I got a Tom Ripley in me. Well, it's an interesting question. In the Jackson Wolf trilogy, so the final book of the trilogy, again, this wasn't planned, and as somebody who is a proclaimed planner, I feel like I should hand in my badge. But as I started to write that, Jackson Wolf started to kind of protrude and, sort of want to make his viewpoint known, and to be fair, he's gone through 2 books, sort of only being in the shadows, and, he's somebody who really plays with the concept of identity. So which makes him spectacularly difficult to catch, because by the time you know what you're looking for, he's now somebody else. And so he has spent the first 2 books very much in the shadows. So in book 3, he kind of went, actually, this time I'd like my say, which was really interesting. So he doesn't have the entire book, because I don't want to spend an entire book in the headspace of my antagonist, because it is, as Mary said, it's very much about, the trilogy is very much about good versus evil, but also about women fighting back against a predator who has in various ways traumatized them all. So the final book, whilst it will have chapters from his point of view, will have a female protagonist who will kind of lead the charge to deal with him. But yeah, I do think that there is a certain amount of, I need to see inside the head of the bad guy, because I think if you don't, he just becomes this cardboard cutout, and it's not as satisfying. I think, as Alison said, you need to see the shades of grey.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I'm, oh gosh, very much keeping an eye on the time now. And finally, before we go to the audience's questions, this is a Welsh festival, so I can't not ask you some questions about Wales or Welsh things. So let's go to Alison first. Alison, what's your favourite Welsh name and why?
Oh, there are so many lovely ones to choose from. But I think one thing is, you're always very much in the world of the novel that you're writing at the moment. And I have a young heroine in my work in progress called Glesney, which I think is just such a lovely name, because it means blue, but it also means freshness and youth. And yeah, so Glesney is one of my favourite names at the moment.
Very nice. Do either of you, Emma and Mary, do you know any Welsh names? And if so, do you have a favourite?
I do.
Go on then.
I hope I'm going to pronounce this properly. Is it Ieuan?
Yes.
Ieuan? My dad was a big Welsh fan, a Welsh rugby fan, and so yeah, Ieuan Evans.
Excellent. Good answers. Well, go on, Emma. You live in South Wales.
Yeah, I do. If I'd have had a girl, I have 2 boys. Very loud, but if I had a girl, the name Seren would have been top of my list.
Star, very nice. Lovely. Okay, what about favourite place in Wales, or if you've never been, where would you like to go? Mary, let's start with you.
Cardiff, because it produced my daughter-in-law.
Oh, perfect.
Who is wonderful.
Good answer. I'm liking that. Where's your favourite place, Emma?
Okay, there are so many places, but last year, just before the pandemic hit, we went to North Wales, to Snowdonia National Park, and we stayed in a cottage right on the top of a mountain with nobody else around, and it was magical. So that is my favourite place.
Oh, excellent. How about you, Alison?
Well, one of my favourite places, among many, because there are so many, is Bardsey Island off the very tip of the Llyn Peninsula. It's a very magical place, and I been on day trips there, but recently they hire cottages out there, and you can go, and it's very basic and very remote. About half a dozen cottages of just you and the birds and the seals. If you go around September time, they're having seal pups and everything, and I just go there for solitude and writing and drinking in the atmosphere. So beautiful place.
Oh, lovely. And last question about Wales. Favourite Welsh actor? Alison, we'll start with you this time. Do you have a favourite Welsh actor?
Again, there are some really good ones. My favourite at the moment, I think, has to be Eve Miles of Keeping Faith. One thing that really impressed me was the way that the series was filmed in both languages and put out in both languages. And I understand she learnt Welsh. I think she had a smattering in childhood, but basically she learnt Welsh for the role, which I think is an amazing example, brilliant thing to do.
Absolutely. How about you, Emma?
It has to be Anthony Hopkins. I mean, can do no wrong.
Yes, Sir Anthony, now yet again Oscared. Yes,
well, yeah,
Mary, favourite Welsh actor?
Mine is Swansea's Matt Ryan, because he shares a name with the protagonist of my second series, the Ryan and O'Neill series. So his name is Matthew Ryan as well.
Okay, good choices. Right, we're on 9:45, I beg your pardon now. So I'm going to ask Amy to come with audience questions. Hopefully she's been wumbling them all up and she will now pop up as if by magic. Hey, Amy, to you.
Yes, so I have been watching the stream and gathering all the questions, and I do have quite a few here for you guys. So I suppose this one is for everyone, and this one is from Susan Lewis, and she asks, when you are writing a series of books, do you plan your main character's life out in advance through to the last book?
Mary, start with you.
No, I don't. I mean, I haven't got a series arc. I don't know whether I'm going to stop at 8 books, which would be the next one, or 18 or 38 or whatever. So no, they move, they grow. Obviously, they have to grow, but I don't have a whole arc ready.
Okay, Emma, shall we assume that your Jackson Wolfe trilogy is a series?
Yeah. So it's a limited series.
Yes.
So yeah, I actually did plan out the sort of narrative for Jackson Wolfe. But I also then had to plan out the narratives for the 3 protagonists for each of the books. So yes, I had many spreadsheets. It was quite the adventure.
It's the theme.
Alison, what about you?
Yeah, I haven't written a series, but the novel I'm working on at the moment is actually, it's set in the future, but it actually involves some characters from Riverflow. So not being a big planner, no, I haven't got the arcs worked out forever and ever, but it's interesting going into the quite distant future of characters who I got to know in the present now. So.
Brilliant. And Susan also asked, she says, Mary, she thoroughly enjoyed Without a Trace. When do we get the next one?
Well, there is another one written, and it will come out in January of next year. Another Kate Daniels. Without a Trace did so well that they put the Stone and Oliver book back and said, would you write another Kate Daniels quickly? And I said, yeah, I can do that. And then wished, oh my God. I was about 40,000 words in, and I think I said, oh, give me another 6-8 weeks. And then I literally wrote for 16 hours a day for all of that time without any days off. But I came out with a good book at the end of it, and it's called Her Last Request. And that will be book 8 in the series. So and the next one, the Stone and Oliver one, as I said, is already written, and that'll go the following year. So I'm way ahead of myself. I think I'll have a holiday when we can all be out there properly and enjoying ourselves. Hopefully that won't be too long.
Brilliant. The next question is from Nellie Williams, who is one of the festival organisers, wonderful Nellie, and she asks, do you visualise your characters and do they become real people during the writing process? Who would like to go first? Emma?
I'll go first. I have to I cast my characters. So when I do my spreadsheet, when I have my character bio for each person, I find an actor or actress who kind of looks like I think that they should look. The big problem is there are very few unattractive actors or actresses. So sometimes you have to, you know, sort of blur the image. But yeah, so I do visualize, and they, once you have that basic outline, they tend to take on their own sort of image then. But yeah, very important for me.
Alison, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely know who they are. I can't remember the name for it, but I don't have a particularly visual memory. But I know exactly who they are. Like if they walk down the street, I would know them. In fact, it's happened to me before. There was one time we were on holiday. This was our first novel, someone else's conflict. I saw somebody. It was in a queue somewhere, and I said, "That's Jade from my first novel." And it was just really weird when you see a character who looks just, so I'm there sort of taking surreptitious photo of this poor guy, like innocently standing in a queue. So yeah, I would. I mean, I do have a mental image, and I would know these people if they walked up and said hello, which they're not likely to do. But.
I don't.
Barry?
No, I don't. I feel my characters rather than see them. I don't very often put much of a description into the characters. I think that every reader will think Kate looks different, you know, in their own head. And, you know, when she's cast for television, I'm sure everybody will go, "Oh, no, that's not how I thought," you know, whatever. But, you know, I feel her and she's with me, and yes, she's real. But I don't see her, and I don't look for, you know, photographs that might be her or anything like that. I just, you know, she's inside me, if you know what I mean. If that doesn't sound weird.
And as you were talking, and another question has popped up, and it says, I'm rather than looking at the screen now, I'm looking at the stream on my phone, and it says, given your association with Sprout Productions, do you have any thoughts on who would take the role of Kate?
No.
Nothing.
Various actresses have been mentioned, but I am completely and utterly sworn to secrecy, and I couldn't tell you who that might be. I just hope when it happens, you enjoy who they pick. If that's good enough.
Absolutely. Are you excited about it?
Oh, you know, really, really excited. But it's television isn't like books. You don't have an idea and 2 years later it's on the shelf. It's been going on for about 5-6 years now. You know, it's all going in the right direction. We're not under option. We're in development. You know, it will happen. But it's you have to be ever so patient. And, you know, we've had so many conversations with different people over the time, and, you know, and there's been a lot of hard work. But unlike a lot of writers who never get involved with the production company, Sprout have always wanted me across everything they've done. So it's been quite a lot of work for me that I've thoroughly enjoyed doing. So, yeah, you know, hopefully it won't be too long. I keep saying that to people every year. I say that, and you know, but it won't be long, I don't think.
We have a question from Martine for Alison. She says that she loved Riverflow, and she'd like to know what you're writing next.
I'm writing a novel that doesn't have a title at the moment, but it's set probably 2 or 3 decades into the future, so it's quite a departure. There are elements of crime and mystery in it, definitely. It's looking at the way the world could change if we go down the worst possible path, and a small community of people leading a good life, and others who are basically out to get them. So there we are. So I can't say too much at the moment because I'm still feeling my way through it.
And then we have 2 final questions, and these are for everybody. So the first one is from Kath Stansfield, and she would love to know how you manage editing your novels. Do you feel confident about judging the end once you get there? Would you like to start, Emma?
Yeah, go on. I'm another one of those people who I really enjoy editing, because it feels like you've gotten the big scary blank page out of the way. And I'm a big believer in get it written and then get it right. So that get it written phase is always the most terrifying for me. And I like the challenge of editing and sort of moving pieces around. And I think judging an ending can be quite difficult. But I do think that you have to kind of trust yourself, and especially the more you write and the more you get used to doing it. I think that you have to know when to stop writing as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Alison?
Yeah, I agree. I enjoy editing, and I probably enjoy it more than the first draft. As you say, there's nothing worse than that blank page, and it's lovely to have something to work on. You know your characters. Someone like me who doesn't plan, you know your story, you know where it's going, and I'm quite although I say I make it up as I go along, I am quite a perfectionist, and so the editing does it for me. In terms of ending, yeah, it depends whether you mean the ending of the book or the ending of the job, because it is difficult to know where to stop. But endings, yeah, I think the story knows its ending. You want to finish it in a satisfying way, but not tie up every loose end over neatly, leave enough there for people to think about. I sort of know where I'm heading when I'm writing in terms of an ending, but both my books so far, I've written the end and worked my way towards them, and then it turns out that things happen. The ending isn't what I thought the ending was. It's there, but it's not necessarily the ending. So, but I know when I've finally got it, it's there and it feels right.
Yeah, I always know the ending before. I always know the ending before I start. I haven't ever changed an ending, actually. But I love, like Alison and Emma, I love anything that makes a book better. I love my editors who make me look good, because I'm not. I think, I've learned an awful lot over the books that I've written, but it is just the start rather than the finish when you turn it in for an edit. Because no matter how good a writer you are, you will not see things that an editor will see. And I think as you go on, you have the confidence to discuss with your editor why you need to keep something they won't get rid of. Whereas at the beginning, you don't have that confidence. And there's a lot more pulling things apart and putting it together again. But yeah, I do love the editing process.
Brilliant. And one final question, and again, this is for everybody. Can you and do you read other books while you're in the middle of writing your own? And if so, what is it that you read? Is it crime or is it something totally different? And that's from Anne.
I'll go first then. I read constantly because I just couldn't. It would be like not breathing. I read lots and lots of nonfiction, and I tend to read multiple books at the same time. And my favorite kind of fiction to read is something completely different. So something like fantasy, something. I don't think I can read crime while I'm writing crime. It's just too close. So yeah, definitely reading, but definitely like to mix up the genres a little bit.
And what's the favorite book that you've read recently?
Oh my God, there's so many good ones, and see, lots of pressure now.
Well, do you want to come back? We'll come back. We'll let the others answer the first. Then we'll come back.
I still won't remember. My favorite book of all time, the one I mentioned earlier, is the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin.
Brilliant. Alison, what about you? Do you read while you're writing?
Definitely, yes. Like Emma, I couldn't imagine not having a book on the go. And yeah, people say they stop reading because it influences what they're writing. I find I can keep the two apart. You know, it doesn't worry me too much that whatever I'm reading is feeding into what I'm writing, because what you're writing is your thing. So yes, and I read anything and everything. Yeah, I like all genres really, so it's just whatever takes my fancy at the time. I mean, at the moment, writing something set in the future, I am reading quite a lot of futuristic, apocalyptic novels, some good and some not so good, so that's interesting. But yeah.
I don't think you can really stop reading, because we are readers before we're writers. So and I think the thing is that you get sent so many books by publishers who are saying, you know, we'd love you to read this and tell us what you think, and you can't possibly keep up with them all. So some of them will end up, well, lots of them will be crime, but I tend to, I found Mick Herron, and I love Mick Herron. I mean, he makes me laugh. The last one, I've just finished Slow Horses, which is fantastic. I just think he's so talented, and the characters are just so awful in some ways, but it's so good, so well put together. And I love listening. If anybody is an audiobook reader or listener, and they want a good series, get this series on audio, because the narrator is unbelievable. I can tell you honestly, it makes the stories. Mick is chosen very well. So yeah, that's what I've been doing recently.
Fantastic. So I'm going to pop off now and leave you with Alice again. But we're getting so many comments about, you know, how much everyone's loved the event and how they're all going out to buy all of your books.
Great.
And hopefully they'll find some new favourites. So that's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Bye.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amy, very much. That was great, as ever. So nice not to have to be looking at the comments all the time. It takes a lot of stress off. So we have reached the end of the event now, I'm afraid. It only remains for me to say thank you so much to my wonderful panel, to Mary Hannah, to Emma Kavanagh, and to Alison Layland, and to say thank you very much to you, the audience. Thank you for your questions, thank you for your patience, thank you for your involvement, and please do go to Chepstow Books. They have a wonderful bookshop.org page where they've put everybody's books up from tonight, so you don't have to go looking for them. If you go to bookshop.org and choose Chepstow Books, all the books will be there for you, so it's nice and easy. So thank you very much, Noswaith dda, good night, and I hope you come to some more Gŵyl Crown Cymru Festival events. Bye for now.
Thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Alice.